God, I thank you for these people you have brought to this place this morning to worship you and glorify your Son. I ask, God, that you work through me, that your words may be my words, that I may be a vessel for your message. Amen and amen. All right, I'm going to start off doing something that I'm probably not supposed to do. I'm going to, hi everybody in the back. No, not you guys, the ones out here. We have a lot of seats inside, and they take these chairs before church is over. So please, please, come in. Well, those who are willing are coming in to resettle. We're very serious about getting our coffee after church. If you're wondering why the chairs disappear, you can't get between morning church people and their coffee. We give up a lot for coming to church on a Sunday morning, and we will get you out of here before the Redskins game, okay? You will be able to catch it at 1 o'clock. All right. Oh, it's good to see everybody inside. Yes, 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 yes. All right. This is a passage that preachers, man, this is one that you just want to dodge, okay? The language that we're most familiar with in this passage isn't what's written here, at least the language that I'm most familiar with. Give unto the emperor the things that are the emperor's. That's really not what I hear in my head. What most of us hear in our head is give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, give unto God what is God's. That's kind of what resonates in our brains. And we all know that two things in life are certain. Death and taxes. Even Jesus knew that there were two things that were certain in life, death and taxes. And it seems that most of our political arguments these days have something to do with taxes. All right, now at the very beginning, I'm going to tell you that this is not going to be a sermon about taxes, because that would put you all to sleep and you would never ever come back. I am not an economist. I do not work with money for a living. I am not an expert in these things. I am someone who has heard God's call to speak to those who do. And we have all kinds of people talking about taxes and how we can be responsible for one another in our society. There are super committees that have been formed. I don't know what a super committee looks like, but apparently it's very, very important that the super committee exists. We have presidential candidates, we have talking heads, we have journalists, we have academics, we have the conversations with each other about how to best be responsible to each other. That's really what taxes are all about. How can we be responsible to one another? But what does the message always seem to be? No, tax me less. It's always tax me less. And it's always tax you more. That's what it always seems to be, but that's not what our gospel teaches us about how we serve one another. I'm going to move away from taxes and talk about service. Because in our passage today, Jesus is given an opportunity to speak a word about it. And what does he do? A little sidestep, a little Savior sidestep, just saying, you know what? I can handle everything, but I'm not touching taxes, okay? Y'all are just gonna have to figure that one out by yourself. We don't get a clear answer. We get guidance that can help us here today, but we don't get a clear answer. We get this ambiguous, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, give unto God what is God's. And preachers can take that in about a million different directions, and there might be a day when those sermons are appropriate, but these are not the sermons I am going to give today. I'm not going to give a sermon about giving to the church and tithings and offerings and this and that, and that money going to God goes to the church. I'm not going to give that sermon. I'm not going to give a sermon about the separation of church and state. Another sermon, not what I'm talking about today. I'm not going to talk about obeying authority. I'm not even going to talk about Jesus pocketing the money. Because if you read the passage, does he give it back? Jesus doesn't, they don't make a note of what Jesus did with it. Oh, give me money, there you go. Okay, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, give unto God's what is God's. And he just kind of takes the change and maybe went and bought a sandwich. I don't know what he did with what he was given. But I'm going to take us in a different direction because I think the conversation about taxes, whether we have it with each other in our personal lives or whether we have it at the super committee level or at the mass media level, is beyond, it's a conversation beyond what we're capable of having. And I want to back us up. The reason we haven't figured out the taxes question is we haven't figured out how to serve each other in our personal lives. We can't even bring the conversation to the next level until we know how to serve one another in our homes and in congregations like this one. We're not even ready for that conversation. Really, we're not even ready for it. We still have to have it. I understand that. But I just want to pull us back to here and how we serve one another here as Christians in this church. What do we do to serve one another? And I'm going to tie it to our Opening Doors campaign that's going on. And it's all good things that are happening with the Opening Doors campaign. It is a good thing to bring more people into the church, to let folks know that we are a resource here in our community. So I want you to imagine a doorstop. You don't have to imagine it. 9 o'clock had to imagine it. I found one. Between the 9 and 11, I hope there is no one stuck in the basement because I took the doorstop. The cinder block is really thick. We might not hear them. We might not find them until after the 11 o'clock service. Once the door is open and we put the doorstop in, then what? Then what? The door stays open. You're absolutely right. The door stays open. People come in, and what do they find? That's what we're bringing to the community is us, is what they find when they come in the door. I'm going to put this down because someone was afraid I was going to use it as a weapon, that I would use like a shank or something or throw it at someone. So I'm just going to put that over there so that no one gets hurt in the course of this sermon. They are going to find this church, and they are going to find this church in that place short of the question about taxes, where we're learning to serve one another, where we're learning to be in community with one another. And in this church, I'm just going to start with the big pink elephant in the corner. Do we have money problems? Yes, but it's not because of our budget. It's not because of our budget. People may disagree, but this is my sermon. It's not because of our budget. It's not because there is a lack of money in this room. We have money problems because everybody has money problems. We are a cross-section of the community. That is the beauty of this congregation. The beauty of this congregation and what people will find when they come in to this worship space is that they will find somebody just like them. How many of you have been to other churches on a Sunday morning in Washington, D.C.? How many of the congregations look like this one? Exactly. Nobody has their hand up. That's what's powerful about this congregation. How we serve one another, how we learn to do that starts right here. It starts right here. So that's my question to us. How do we serve God and one another and take that out into the community and bring people in to our community? And I ask that knowing the beauty and the diversity of this congregation. And I don't mean the big picture diversity. I don't mean the equal opportunity diversity. I mean diversity in every possible way in this congregation. Thinking of Frank Kameny and his passing recently, I was reminded of a saying that was popular around MCC in the 80s and the 90s. And the saying was, the church has AIDS. The church has AIDS. That was a way to help people realize how close HIV and AIDS was to every single person in a congregation. Because what our faith teaches us is if you have something and are suffering with something, I am suffering with something, and you are here and you are in my world and you are part of my community, and I am here to serve you and you are here to serve me. The church has AIDS. And so who are we? Who is this church? Who is this congregation? We are wealthy. We are wealthy. We have more than a handful of people making six-figure incomes. More than a handful. And we have people making minimum wage. We have people who have successful careers that have gone on for decades, and we have people who are unemployed and can't find a job to save their lives. In this congregation, I am talking about people who we know here. I'm not talking about people out there. I'm not talking about the people in Freedom Plaza. I'm not talking about the people in the neighborhood. I'm talking about people right here. How do we learn to serve each other? We grew up with nannies, or we grew up with WIC. Both are true here in this congregation. We have remote-controlled fireplaces. Yeah, that got a giggle at the 9 o'clock too, where somebody's like, how'd they know? They're really awesome. I don't have one, but they are really, really awesome. And if somebody wants to lend one, that would be fine. We're human. We have remote-controlled fireplaces, and we have people who live in homes with no heat. That is a reality of this congregation right here and right now. How do we serve one another in that place? How does the person with no heat serve the person with the fireplace, and vice versa? How can we best serve one another? We are doctors, and we are people who cannot access health care. Right here in this congregation, we live in million-dollar homes. It's like this secret that people don't want to talk about, that there's wealth here, that there's some kind of false humility about it. We live in million-dollar houses. We live in $500,000 houses, and we are homeless in this congregation right here and right now. How do we serve one another? We leave our front doors unlocked because our neighborhoods are that good, and we sleep away from the window because we're worried about the bullets coming through. That is this congregation right here now. How do we serve one another? It's not about taxes. We're not that far along. We need to figure out how to serve one another. We are women who know sexism and know misogyny when we see it and when we hear it, and we inflict it without knowing on the people we love. We are African Americans, and we are Latino, and we are anything other than Caucasian in this culture, and we know racism every single time it rears its head, and we inflict it out of apathy or ignorance on the people we love. How do we serve one another in this place to learn from each other, to take the message of God further? We are privileged. We are privileged. Just by living in the United States, we are privileged. And we see those who are privileged, and we wonder if they will ever get it, if they will ever know how lucky they are to have been born into the skin that they've been born into the world that they've been born into. How do we serve God, and how do we serve one another? We are lesbians. Yay! 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 We are gay. We are bisexual. We are trans men, and we are trans women. We are intersex. We are androgynous. We are leather dykes. We are drag queens. We are everything you can think of and more. And we're straight. Don't want to scare anybody, but there are straight people here. And there are straight people here because our message is one of God's love, not what we do. We are from Potomac, and we are from the projects. We are from holiness churches and Roman Catholic churches and UCC and UMC and AME and CME and AME Zion and Presbyterians and Lutherans and Missouri Synod Lutherans. We are agnostic and atheist and unchurched and overchurched. We are, and some of us are Jewish. I mean, we're all of those things and more in this congregation right here and right now. How do we serve one another? How do we learn from one another? We seek to serve those who are less fortunate. And I'm putting that in air quotes, all right? Because who calls people less fortunate? The people who think they're more fortunate, right? The people who they think that God has blessed them and not the other people, all right? We seek to serve the less fortunate, and we neglect to ask them what kind of service might be helpful or if they even want it. We